A massive smuggling ring was busted by federal officials this week, with 12 people accused of conspiring to smuggle illegal Cuban migrants to the United States for profit. And we're told that they allegedly charged up to $40,000 for each person they successfully brought into the U.S.
What would you say if you learned that criminals were charging families as much as $40,000 each, promising a safe path into the United States, but instead exploiting them, laundering millions, and even coaching children to lie to border officials? This isn't fiction, it's reality. And federal law enforcement just exposed one of the most sophisticated human smuggling empires ever discovered in Florida. With over $18 million in illicit profits, fake companies, bogus visa schemes, and vulnerable minors placed in harm's way, the operation shocked even seasoned investigators.
President Biden's new executive order is the latest attempt to restrict the amount of migrants who claim asylum between ports of entry at the southern border. But will any of it make a difference? Tonight, our Matt Rivers takes the question to the people smuggling migrants into America with unparalleled access inside the human smuggling operation of one of the largest cartels in Mexico. It's an industry worth billions.
Let's break it down: the massive $18 million Cuban human smuggling empire taken down in Tampa and the heroic work of ICE and U.S. prosecutors who stopped it. This week, federal officials revealed a shocking case that shows just how far criminal networks are willing to go for profit. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the takedown of a Cuban smuggling operation that had been functioning like a business, moving thousands of people, exploiting the U.S. immigration system, and pocketing tens of millions of dollars in the process. This was not a small-time network sneaking people across the border. This was a highly organized, multi-state enterprise with leadership figures, detailed ledgers, and carefully managed financial systems designed to avoid detection. The scale is staggering. The group collected over $18 million, charging migrants anywhere from $1,500 to $40,000 for illegal entry into the United States. More than $2.5 million was spent on flights alone, as the smugglers made use of commercial airlines, chartered jets, and private flights. They laundered money through fake immigration companies, fraudulent asylum claims, and payment apps like Zelle, systematically moving over $7 million through financial channels. What makes this case so disturbing is that it wasn't just about money, it was about exploiting the most vulnerable, including children. Prosecutors say the group instructed unaccompanied minors on how to deceive border officials. These children were flown into U.S. airports alone, placed on connecting flights, and told to tell lies to Customs and Border Protection officers. Imagine the risk of placing a child on a plane by themselves with a rehearsed story and no real guardianship, sent into an uncertain future. One teenage girl, according to officials, was instructed to pretend to be the lifelong friend of a grown man she had never met before. These actions placed children in unimaginable danger, and it reveals the ruthless disregard for human life that defined this network. The investigation identified 12 defendants operating across Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and even back into Cuba. In Tampa, the hub of the operation, names like Lorzo Rodriguez, Yana Lima Santos, Eric Vento Castro, Miguel Alejandro Martinez, and several others emerged as key players. In Tennessee, prosecutors identified Layana Perez, while in Texas, they tied Walbus Paso Dutel to the conspiracy. Internationally, Cuban nationals including Mariana Lucy Lopez Torres and Franny Aragon Diaz were connected to the enterprise. Each one of these defendants played a role in maintaining the smuggling business, from recruiting migrants on social media to coordinating transportation and handling payments. What truly shocked investigators was the way the network operated like a legitimate corporation. The smugglers kept ledgers with travel dates, lists of clients, routes, and even balances owed. They created a front company that looked like an immigration service firm, advertising asylum applications, work permits, and consultation. On Instagram and WhatsApp, they promoted their services with flashy videos, stacks of passports, images of airline tickets, and what appeared to be successful visa approvals. They even created WhatsApp groups with titles like Processing ESTA Visas for Spanish Citizens to lure Cuban migrants into their scheme. Behind the facade, however, was a dark reality. The so-called immigration services were fraudulent. The smugglers filed hundreds of boilerplate asylum applications without telling clients, used fake addresses, and blocked clients from accessing their own immigration accounts. Victims were not only paying for smuggling, they were being tricked into legal jeopardy that could destroy their chances of ever becoming legal residents in the future. This double exploitation, charging for illegal entry while sabotaging real immigration cases, shows the depth of the criminal deception. Attorney General Pam Bondi made the message clear: this case was about protecting vulnerable people. She highlighted how children were targeted and coached, how families were drained of their life savings, and how the immigration system itself was manipulated for criminal gain. It is not safe for you or for your families, she warned, urging migrants not to put their trust in these criminal networks. Her statement reflected the broader mission of law enforcement, to safeguard lives while dismantling enterprises that profit from human suffering. The transportation system itself was layered. Lower-paying clients were moved on commercial flights, while those who paid more received private flights and more discreet travel options. This tiered structure mimicked legitimate business services, with different packages depending on payment. It is chilling to think about smugglers designing their criminal operation with the same attention to customer service as a real company. But that is exactly what investigators uncovered. The financial structure was equally complex. More than $7 million flowed through Zelle payments, with additional funds laundered through fake companies and shell accounts. The defendants hid money across different states and countries, making it harder to track. But thanks to the coordination of Joint Task Force Alpha, the specialized federal initiative that targets human smuggling networks, prosecutors were able to connect the dots and present a complete picture of the empire. Joint Task Force Alpha has already made over 4,500 arrests, secured more than 350 convictions, and imposed major prison sentences on smugglers across the hemisphere. The Tampa case is just one example of how this coordinated federal approach is breaking down entire criminal networks, not just catching low-level smugglers. By targeting leadership, seizing assets, and uncovering financial records, law enforcement is dismantling the infrastructure that keeps these operations running. The smugglers relied heavily on social media to recruit and deceive. They marketed directly to Cuban migrants, promising visas through false claims of European citizenship. Promotional videos glamorized their services, making desperate people believe they were buying a legitimate opportunity. Once clients paid, they were caught in a trap, shuffled through fraudulent legal filings, coached to lie to officials, and left vulnerable to deportation or worse. These digital tactics reveal a modern face of smuggling, no longer confined to physical borders but expanded into the online world, where ads and encrypted messaging apps fuel international crime. The most alarming aspect, and one that cannot be emphasized enough, was the exploitation of children. Federal prosecutors detailed how kids were coached on false stories, told to memorize lies about family connections, and sent through airports alone. In some cases, children were paired with unrelated adults and told to pretend they had family ties. This deliberate manipulation of minors for profit was one of the strongest pieces of evidence demonstrating the criminal intent behind the operation. It also underscored why ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and the Department of Justice must remain vigilant. Protecting children from these dangers is a national priority, and this case makes that clear. The results of the Tampa takedown were decisive. 12 individuals were charged with crimes ranging from human smuggling to visa fraud and money laundering. Assets were seized, accounts tracked, and financial networks disrupted. The indictment covered operations running from January 2021 through June 2025, showing how long the group had been operating under the radar before finally being stopped. For years they treated human beings like commodities, charging fees, keeping records, and pushing children into dangerous situations. Now, thanks to federal coordination, their empire has collapsed. This case sends a strong signal: criminal networks that exploit immigration and endanger vulnerable people will face justice. ICE and federal prosecutors are proving that these enterprises, no matter how sophisticated, cannot escape accountability. By targeting both the people and the financial structures, law enforcement is dismantling smuggling operations from the ground up. America is safer because these criminals are behind bars, and families are no longer at risk of being tricked into handing over their life savings to people who never cared about their safety.